And good morning, Facebook family. And I've got notifications popping up here. As you can see, I am in lovely downtown Laguna. Well, I'm not in downtown, but you can see downtown Laguna down below me here. Yeah, I say this every time, and it's still not old. I mean, I've been here for 5 months now, and I would say I like it a lot every day. It's been kind of hot here in Laguna today. It's actually a little brisk. Got my little long sleeve kicking. Absolutely nothing to complain about. Saying many, many prayers for my friends, that are like family out in Florida right now. And definitely sending you guys and gals some love and to remain safe and be prepared. Treat this one serious, as we should always. And Larry the Stretch Mott, my brother from another mother. What's going on, man? Whenever you see Larry and I together, it's probably pretty hilarious because what are you, like 7 foot now? Something like that, Larry. Anyway, miss you, man. I hope you're doing well. Good to see you. I know you're rocking it out, getting your twang on with the Git Fiddle. So listen, I wanted to shoot this video. Interestingly enough, and I named it Making Space and putting my dating life on display, which is kind of interesting because I don't have a dating life. I have chosen not to date a lot. I've done a little bit here and there, but I'm going to really dive in here. I was having a great conversation with my neighbor, Katerina Satori. If you don't follow her, Larry's 6'9". Okay, close enough, brother. Right. But I was having this amazing conversation with my neighbor last night, and we were really talking about this, and I'm going to share with you some context of, where I'm going with this. But making space. Hey, Diana, welcome. So a lot of times when I look at, my life, and especially, being single, I look at my dating life and however non-existent it might necessarily be by choice, there's always allowing stuff in the space. And what do I mean by this? Well, quite frankly, I am absolutely open to meeting and connecting with deeply someone that I'm going to have a deep, long-lasting relationship with. Of course, the first person I'm going to start with is myself. That's kind of given. But the key is to have a container large enough and that is empty enough, in essence, to allow this individual into my life, or to make space to receive this quality of individual. Speaking of intimacy, Erica, welcome. Glad to have you here. And one of the things that I've discovered, at least, myself, and I've definitely in the past having my dating, my abandonment, my whatever you want to call it, shit, in my personal life, was allowing, certain people or relationships into my world that were more like cookies than actually taking the time to cook. And I'm talking like Oreo cookies. Like, you can go buy them. Like, they're fast acting, they tend to not have a lot of substance to them. And so, I looked at my life in a lot of ways and said, wow, like, I've got all of these like little things that I've flirted with, these little relationships that I've flirted with, or, have played and toyed around with. And listen, online makes it easier than ever to do these days. I'm not on dating sites, but certainly that's one way you can do it. Facebook's another, or like Tinder is another one. And I'm not shooting any of these things down, but I'm just saying that, there's a certain awareness that when you've had a certain experience over time, and I believe that time exposes and promotes people, and their level of awareness and consciousness, and whether that agenda is conscious or unconscious, they do have an agenda. After a while, when you've started to experience enough of these, you start to realize, like, okay, these cookies are making me fat. And I think I want to cook some, like, healthier food. Or for my vegans, or for my raw vegans, you can just eat totally raw food too. You don't have to cook it. But you get the point, is that after a while, I start to notice there are patterns. I start to notice what my weaknesses, if we want to call it that, or my area of non-talents, where I'm like either choosing not to confront. Let's just be real. I'm choosing not to confront that stuff. Where there are these areas and these relationships and these things that come up that I realize aren't really necessarily good for me. Or there's just not an energetic fit, right, between myself and this other person. But what ends up happening is there tends to be a lot of like open loops that have happened to me in the past. And these open loops are where I leave the doors open for these kind of cookie type relationships where I know I've already kind of gone there. I've already realized they're not necessarily an energetic fit for me, but I continue to open that door and continue to eat that cookie. Probably not the best metaphor I could have just used, but you get my point, right? And so what I've realized is, there comes a point where where it makes sense to close those doors. It makes sense to get a better look here of downtown Laguna. It makes sense to clear that space. And when you clear that space, what I've discovered for myself is when I begin to clear that space, energetically, I have a larger container, and that I'm actually speaking into and demonstrating, the relationship that I'm open to receiving, and the quality of the relationship, and the magnitude of the energy of this particular, woman that I'm open to receiving into my life. Now, why do I put my dating life, quote unquote, personal life out there like this right now? Well, it's because I've noticed that this concept, and I figured it'd be a really easy one to explain. This same concept is absolutely true in your business. So if you're like me, you have an online digital business, you're in the coaching, consulting field. What's up, my cannonball brother? What's going on, man? The same thing is true there when you continue to take on board clients that are kind of the same way. They're not a good energetic match. They're not a good energetic fit, but you continue to take them because of the money, right? And believe me, I know what that's like, where there's times when you want to get paid and you bring on board somebody that's not necessarily a good energetic fit or a match, but yet you do it anyway. And there's consequences. There's a natural consequence to that. It's also the same thing when it comes to your diet and how you eat and how you nourish your body. If you're not clearing the space, and in that way it might be like clearing the cupboard, right? If you've got those cookies that are hidden up there, and yet that you're going to be weak, you're going to dive into them, or the quality of food that you keep in the house is definitely, speaking of quality of food, and then Lydia Joy joins us. Hello, Lydia. Again, it's all about clearing the space for the container, for that, to have that larger container for the results that you want to invite into your life, whether it's your dating and relationships, whether it's, your health and your fitness and the food, whether it's your business and your clients and your commissions, that you're looking to receive. Clearing that space, and that requires confrontation. So if you want to clear the space, it requires you to confront the areas in your life that you're not happy with, that you're getting less than desirable results with. And it requires to just be real with yourself and say, you know what, like, I've got these open doors with these, with these relationships, whether if you're a woman, if it's men that you keep noticing, I think there's a concept called the boomerang boyfriend. And it's kind of funny, because I've definitely been that boyfriend. I've been that boomerang. Where you throw it away and he still comes back, right? And same thing happens, when you're a man and you have, specific, relationships, and women, they'll keep coming back and they keep testing those doors and they'll keep knocking to see if you want to answer or not. And so, for me, I've just really discovered that the confronting of this and really acknowledging where I continue to open those doors, or where I continue to have that space not cleared, that I'm just simply inviting results into my life that I'm not particularly really wanting. But the less that I confront those doors, the less that I actually confront them and actually move through them, then I just continue to invite that stuff more into my life, whether it's relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's my health and food, or whether or not it's my finances. It's just ultimately my beingness is to literally be at the highest level that I know that I can operate at. And that means being very real with myself, hence, why I'm doing this particular Facebook Live, in order to shed light on this one area, which happens to might be, say, dating. But I think the relevance and the metaphor of this goes so much deeper into our body, our beingness, our bank accounts, and just really understanding these areas. Mitchell, hello. Welcome. So hopefully this has kind of given some thought and maybe whether if you're single, then cool. This could be a very relevant metaphor. If you're not single, it could still be a relevant metaphor, just because I think we've all been there. We've all dated. We've all been in relationships. And so if you find yourself continuing to open doors, even though you know that you've already opened that door, you've already been with this person, or if you've ever been around that person, and you keep getting the same lessons, then, that's an area of confront. And so to not confront is to self-abandon. And so what I've discovered, in order to love little Tony, my little 5-year-old inside, I've got to honor that space, because he knows when he feels safe. He knows when he doesn't feel safe in a particular relationship or a particular person who's attempting to be in a relationship. There's always red flags, whether it's in friendships, whether it's in relationships, intimate relationships. There are definitely flags that I know to pay attention to acknowledge, and I have a choice. I can either choose to, go unconscious and go into that relationship, maybe only seeking, something that's shallow. Or I can go in and say, you know what, I've been here before, I've done this, and I'm not going to do it anymore. And the same thing can absolutely be said for a coaching practice. It absolutely can be said where, you're continuing to invite clients into your coaching world that are not an energetic match, but they give you the money, right? It's the same thing with the dating world. If I want to be crass and be, a guy, I could say, okay, well, yeah, I know this is not a good relationship, but I'm going to get sex. Well, we already know that that's going to come at a very deep consequence, not only to the relationship, but ultimately to me. And I choose to respect and to honor and to love my little Tony and not just hand him off in such a manner. So I think this is a very relevant idea, a very relevant concept that you and I can apply not only to our relationships, because this can apply not to intimate, but also to friendships. It can also relate to, of course, your business practice. It can also, of course, relate to your health. Clear the space. Clear the space. Give yourself that arena, that opportunity to invite that which is really in your good. And to not do so is to continue to go unconscious. Now, with all of that being said, if we continue with the dating piece of it, listen, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know that all relationships are going to work out. And this has been one of my things, is learning to make wiser choices. So I'm going to give you a little idea here. I probably should have mentioned this. Thanks, Mitchell. Glad you dig this. I'm going to give you 3 ways of which I look at, these are 3 filters that I use in order to kind of notice in the dating world. And I think this is really relevant even if you're looking at friendships or partnerships, especially. This is a great 3 filters that I use. Number 1, I always want to see what somebody's like when they're relaxed. And listen, it's probably the easiest because we all can be relaxed, especially if you go out and you have a glass of wine with somebody. You're always going to be relaxed and you're going to have a good time, right? And so the next thing I want to do is I want to see how they are when they're intimate. And I don't just mean sex, obviously, because if you're applying this to even friendships with another man, that's probably not something you want to go into necessarily. But intimacy, what does that really mean? When I look at intimacy, say for an example, if I'm dating someone for a while and we, decide we're going to meet the parents, when I go to meet the parents, how is she? Does she give dad a hug, or is she really offset? Does she, her brother, does she give him a hug, or is she really standoffish? Or, I just want to see how she is with her girlfriends even. How is it when we get to those intimacies? And of course, ultimately when you get into, the sex, that's a whole nother world. But, ultimately I'm looking through that filter at how they show up when they are intimate with myself, with family, with friends. And then, of course, ultimately, I want to see how they are when they're stressed, which is, again, is another, and what do they perceive as stressful? Literally, if we go on a date, say we've met for a coffee or something quick, and then we go out on a date, and, say I go for dinner, and all of a sudden, maybe the waiter brings something that's incorrect, and she flies off the handle and freaks out. Well, I probably know if she's going to think that's stressful, then actually, having a life with an entrepreneur probably is going to stress her out even more to some degree. So, I like to look at those 3 particular filters. I like to see, and I think time exposes or promotes everyone's level of consciousness. I said this before. And I think it's really, really key. It's really important. There could be other filters, and if you have them, chime in below. I think these would be very, very powerful to add on to. There's just 3 that I know that I've leveraged to really pay attention to. And cool, Diana. I'm glad you like them. Appreciate you too, of course. And so, how are somebody when they're relaxed? How are they when they're intimate? And how are they when they're stressed? And taking a look at through these three filters and seeing how people show up in your world will expose or promote their level of consciousness. And it may not happen right away, but it might, I like to see patterns. So I might just not want to see one particular stressful situation. I might want to see, a pattern of stressful situations or level of stress. And so being able to look through these filters without judgment, but just realizing that, again, this person may be, may not necessarily be long-term material. They may not necessarily be a good energetic match for your level of awareness, your level of consciousness where you might be operating at. Again, it's without judgment. It's just really acknowledging. So Diana is asking a question. I like the idea of how you can approach issues once they happen. How does that person show up in the face of conflict? Yeah, I mean, I just like to give people permission to show up as they are. We all can agree that in beginning relationships, there's some pretenses that happen. There's definitely, we're all playing a part, and I've certainly, done that. Today, I have more of a, kind of like in my business, I'm going to, offend people early if they're offensive, or if they're offended, like the word fuck. If that offends them, then chances are on a Facebook Live, I'm going to go ahead and use it. That way, they kind of know that, yep, Tony drops that bomb every now and then. And because if that's going to stress them out, if that's going to offend them, then getting out into the business world and doing coaching and mentoring and working with people, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's offensive out there. There's a lot of stuff that could be very triggering about that. And so as, one of my greatest teachers, she taught me was, if it triggers you, it's probably true on some level for you. And so, it's really, really key that whatever these triggers are, that we discover what they are, now rather than later. So you say, I mean, that's a great way to see how someone is when there's an issue. We see how they show up. Yeah, it demonstrates a lot, because we can say a lot, but I like to see what people demonstrate, because that's how I live my own life. I'm like, okay, that's great to talk, but let's see how it is when they show up. And listen, I'm totally willing and able and capable of being called on my own shit, because, listen, partnerships are not there to always make us happy, I don't believe. They're there to invite us into newer levels of awareness and consciousness around our own beingness. And so, some of the greatest relationships, yeah, you get along great and there's never ever conflict. That could be good, but I think it's also, it also could be said that there are times when, being triggered is in growth, and that when you're in a really loving, deep spiritual partnership, that you guys realize, I say you guys as in a couple, that you may hit that stuff, but you're not going to run away from one another. And I think that's what, in essence, what a true spiritually founded relationship is that you're going to work together through whatever these are, and you're not going to run away from one another. So I'm kind of going off on a bit of a tangent, but I think that these are kind of still relevant points for, both your relationships, as well as what I consider, I mean, listen, relationships are in everything. Our relationship to how we treat ourselves is probably the most important relationship, right? And then ultimately we're going to, I say we, as in you and I, it's highly likely I'm going to invite people into my world in a relationship that are going to mirror, at least at some level of consciousness that I have of my own. So I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If I happen to date somebody that doesn't go well, or maybe it ends quickly, I mean, it's certainly there for me to learn through. I definitely learn through relationships. And so I think that, whether that relationship doesn't last very long, maybe if it's only a month. I've had some of these hugely impactful relationships that only lasted like 2.5 months and changed the course of my life. So I can certainly tell you that the relationships that I've invited into my life have certainly been a mirror of the level of awareness that I may or may not have at that moment. And so they've definitely invited me to learn deeply about myself, and to definitely take ownership and make sure that the container that I'm making, the space that I'm making available for the woman that I do want to invite into my life, I want that area, that space, to be clean and clear. And the only way I can do that is by realizing that time does expose or promote people in our lives, and certainly it does my own self, and it exposes their level of awareness and consciousness. And so I can choose to invite people deeper in, or a particular person that I might have an intimate desire with, to go deeper, that I can invite that individual. And so, it's always kind of funny when people talk about dating, and I don't think this is really talked about very much, and I didn't plan on talking about this, but, I think especially for men, it's important to date several people at a time. And when I say dating, I'm not talking about having sex with them. I'm talking about actually getting to know some people, taking some time to go through these 3 filters I talked about, right? The 3 filters to how are they when they're stressed? How are they when they're relaxed? How are they when they're intimate? And again, intimate doesn't mean sex. It just means how they show up. And, being able to date several people at a time. And if somebody was to ask me, hey, are you dating other people? Yeah, I'm dating other people, but I'm not having sex with anybody. I'm simply getting to know people. And because I think that that's, in essence, a healthy way. I'm not actively on dating sites. I'm not actively doing any of this. But, or I'm not doing anything in that sense where I'm inviting it digitally. But certainly I am in a space where I'm inviting, that individual into the container known as Tony Teagarden that I've created. My very, very wise friend, William Holt, says, hi, Tony, relationships are like pouring Miracle-Gro on your learning process or your learning areas. Man, are you absolutely true on that. This is why I love you being my friend, because it's absolutely a fact. And you're right. They are definitely like pouring Miracle-Gro, because they will expose or promote the most vulnerable of areas. And that certainly has been true for me, especially over the last year and a half. I've stayed away from dating really heavily, especially in the last year. Probably in the last few months, I've definitely been more open to that. But prior to that, yeah, I'd not been dating because the Miracle-Gro definitely broke the pot, the last one that I had dated. So, yeah, William, you're absolutely correct, and I think it's a very, very healthy way of looking at it. So, with that, I think I've pretty much nailed this one down. Clear the space is what I would say. Just clear the space. If you know energetically that there are some things that in your behaviors that are creating, ultimately that are taking you out of integrity of attracting or bringing the intimacy, the clients, or the health into your life that you know that you want to have, just simply clear them out and confront them. Number one, probably the big key is confront those and then clear them out, because it certainly makes way for that larger container known as you and I to receive all that we truly do deeply desire and deserve. So, but we've got to demonstrate that, and you and I have got to do it. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for all of your comments, and I love doing these. If you like me doing these more, let me know. I'm talking about stuff right now that really isn't particularly into marketing, but it certainly does translate. I think a lot of stuff, great metaphors translate into business, beingness, balance, your bank accounts, your relationships, all those sort of things. So if you like these, let me know below. Share, comment, and I'll be happy to do some more. So with that, I hope you have a great day. I'm going to give you another great view here of downtown Laguna. And with that, sending you lots of love, and sending Florida and all of our people that are in the pathway of Irma, sending you much love and safety. So with that, peace.